All right, hello and welcome. We're joined now by Fox college football analyst Joel Klatt and the founder of the Big Lead, Jason McIntyre. Let's move to college football, where the first playoff rankings were released yesterday, with Georgia coming in a surprising number 1, and Bama, Notre Dame, and Clemson rounding out the top 4. Cowherd, Bama's been number 1 all year. Do you think Saban is okay with the first playoff ranking?
I think he loves it. I think he wants to be number 4. I think he's tired. I think
or 10.
I think it's hard to be number 1. I think it's hard to be a target. That's like even in the NBA. Who wins 3 straight championships? Who gets to the finals 4 straight years? I mean, Nick's always talking about rat poison, which is us, the media. You build us up. I think he actually saw those rankings and was like literally high-fiving his staff. He wants to go into that Georgia game saying, we should be an underdog to this poor Georgia team, because I think it's hard every week to convince your team that just won 48-7. This week is the best team you're going to play all year. I think he loved it.
I think he's thrilled to death and wishes he was out of the poll entirely, wish he was number 11. But look, Georgia deserves the number 1 ranking.
Yeah.
They have a better resume right now. And so not only is he happy, I think it's legitimate that he can have a little bit of chip over his shoulder. Oh, we're the second best team in the SEC. You mean the conference we dominated? We're the second best team. So I think he's happy as hell.
For me, like the question of like insulted, I don't think he should be insulted, because like you, Whitlock, I think this was the correct ranking. Now, I can say that I think Bama's a better team, but they haven't earned the better spot at this point based on the schedule that they've played. And quite frankly, if you're going to throw Wisconsin under the bus based on who they've played, why doesn't Alabama get the same treatment? Right? I mean, that's my whole problem with this, is that I don't feel like the same metrics are used based on which team. It's all an excuse.
Has Wisconsin won a national championship lately?
I understand but aren't we? I mean, it's such a cyclical sport.
Some of those players are around from their previous national championship. The coach certainly is.
Are you going to tell me that the same criteria is used for Wisconsin and it is Alabama?
It shouldn't be, because Alabama's history is different than Wisconsin.
You're going to use history to rank teams this season?
Nick Saban versus Paul Christ? Yeah, I'm going to use Nick Saban's history versus his history to say, yeah, Alabama should be ranked higher than Wisconsin.
That's foolish. That's like beyond foolish. You can't use any other year. You can't use any other era to rank teams this season. This season is this season. If you talk to any coach in any level of football, but in particular in college football, they will tell you that a team's life ends at the end of the previous season, and it's a totally different team.
Life.
I mean, we're not ranking teams based on the coach. I think Alabama is a terrific team. They're very balanced. Well, I think that they actively schedule as easy as anybody in the country. In the top 10 teams, there's only one team that plays only 9 Power 5 teams, and then they play 2 Group of 5 teams and an FCS. That's Alabama. That's the only schedule makeup that is that easy. They actively go after that type of schedule.
How come nobody's getting on their case about the schedule, Joel? It's really only you.
Because guys like Whitlock say, look at their history, look at their coach.
Did you realize Florida State's an underdog at home this weekend? That's how bad they are this season. They also beat, Fresno, Colorado State. I mean, Georgia unquestionably has the better resume. But as we all know, guys, and this is another part to another layer, Alabama right now would be favored against any other team in the country on a neutral field. I had a Vegas guy on my radio show this week, and he said 3 or more for Alabama. But that doesn't mean they should be number 1 right now.
Listen, optics, this is where I'll agree with Whitlock. I do think you think about coaches, because I think when you stack everything up, optics matter. Wisconsin's offense is average. Alabama crushes everybody.
Sure.
That matters. When you turn the television on, you played football, and you played football, maybe I didn't, although I did quarterback in high school.
Is there video footage of that to back it up?
We gotta get it.
But I mean, Alabama, there's 3 teams in this country that look different. Bama, Clemson, and Ohio State's defensive line. I'm sorry, that matters.
JT Barrett last
JT Barrett looked
Ohio
amazing.
State. My only squabble with this, I think you could make an argument that Clemson's, and I like Clemson.
They're a little overrated right now.
They feel a little overrated. Oklahoma went on the road and beat Ohio State. That feels like a top four.
Maybe not Clemson overrated, but they peaked early against a tougher schedule, and now they're kind of softening against kind of
Where are
the
their
back end of the
quality
schedule.
wins? Where's a quality win for
I think
Clemson?
Auburn's
Louisville
a quality
was a
win.
good win.
Louisville,
Auburn
I
was a
guess
quality
that's
win.
been diminished a little bit, but I will tell you that Clemson is trending in the wrong direction, right? If you are going to use the eye test, since the win over Virginia Tech, their offense and scoring offense since that point is in the 70s in the FBS. So that's something that you'd be a little bit leery of. I will tell you this, over 50% of the teams that are in the initial rankings wind up outside of the playoff. That's been the history of the playoff. 12 teams have gone to the playoff, and in those 12 spots, 7 came from outside of the initial top 4.
Wow.
So we're going to have some shakeup here down the stretch.
I thought I heard you say this last year, and I'm saying this in all seriousness, that it is a TV show. And so they're putting out interesting ratings, give us something to talk about.
I don't disagree with that.
That's what I think they're doing. They're driving interest.
Well, business is business, right? You pay that much for a property, and you're going to need people to tune in on Tuesday.
I mean, the most impressive moment for Notre Dame this year was a loss at home.
I don't know, the last 2 weeks, when you take 2 ranked teams and you dismantle them like USC and North Carolina, I mean, that's pretty impressive now. In particular with a run game, I know one thing about football. Run game and defense travels, and that run game will be able to travel. They're 6th in the country running the ball.
Joel, we'll end on this note. I was better looking than you last week and the week before, and we'll predict next week I'll be better looking than you too.
Welcome back, joined now by a couple of Super Bowl champs, Mark Schlereth, Seth Joyner. We're moving to Dallas, where Ezekiel Elliott's suspension is, for now, back on. Zeke is missing practice this week for the first time all year. And while the NFLPA has filed another appeal, all signs are pointing to Zeke missing this week's game and likely the next 5 games to follow. Either way, the Cowboys offensive lineman Zach Martin says team will run the same plays, and Jason Garrett expressed confidence in Zeke's backups.
We have great confidence in the guys that are going to play in his place. Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden and Rod Smith will all get opportunities to carry the football for us in different situations, and we have great confidence in those guys. They've had success in this league.
All right, McFadden and Morris combined don't come close to matching Zeke's total since he entered the league last year. Whitlock, will Elliott's 6-gamer doom the Cowboys season?
I'm not ready to go there. I need to see it first. I want to see what Dak Prescott does in this situation. I'm not ready to write him off. This is a big opportunity for Dak Prescott, Dez Bryant, receiving game to step up, passing game.
Dallas has 2 problems. They're now too Dak reliant. Secondly, they don't face a bad quarterback for the rest of the way. It's Wentz twice. It's Phillip Rivers. It's Alex Smith. Kirk Cousins is certainly capable. I think the combination of this league is largely, do you get a bye? Do you get a break? They don't get a quarterback break the rest of the way. And Dak now, there's a difference between being complimentary and having to carry an offense. I think they're now too Dak reliant.
Listen, I'm not ready to write them off. And I think Dak, he has got everything that you would want to be a legit star in this league. I think he's that good. Now, have they relied on running the ball? Have they relied on Zeke Elliott? Yeah, because why wouldn't you? When you have somebody that's talented, you're going to do that. They still have an offensive line. Although it hadn't played as well as it did last year, it's starting to get better. They're starting to figure that thing out. They will run the ball. They will open up and maintain their play action ability. The biggest thing about the Dallas Cowboys that will sink them is if they don't possess the ball as an offense. If they struggle holding on to the ball and keeping that defense off the field, that defense is high energy. They will run around, but they will get exposed if they have to play more than 60 plays a game. So that's the biggest issue. But do I have a lot of faith in Dak? Absolutely. Do I think the Cowboys are sunk because they don't have Ezekiel Elliott? Absolutely not.
What else is Jason Garrett going to say? Oh, our season is done. Zeke's going to be suspended. We might as well just pack it up now and call it a day. Of course he's going to come out and say that. But the truth of the matter is Morris and McFadden was on this roster, or Morris was on his way to this roster when they drafted Zeke. If that was the case, then why do you use the number 4 pick overall to pick him up? Okay, this offense runs because of Zeke Elliott. And when Zeke Elliott is not there, it will be problematic for them. It will be problematic. Now, and I told you yesterday. What's that?
They're toast?
No, they're not toast, because I think that I think that Dak is a good quarterback right now. I think over time he will become a great quarterback. He will get to that place where he can take the team, hoist it on his shoulders, and do what needs to be done. But why would you ever put your quarterback in that position when you got a running back like Zeke? He's only going to be gone 6 games, but he is what drives them. And he is such a big part of what they do, not only on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball, because they dominate time of possession when you run the ball and you can run play action. They give this offense an opportunity to get out and get a lead, which makes playing defense a lot easier than when you're playing from 0-0 or even. So it's going to be a big loss. No matter what Jason or anybody says, it's going to be a big loss, and it's going to be a big proving ground for Dak. Can he get to a place where he can take this team and put it on his shoulder?
By the way, Dak's passer rating this year with Zeke is 96. Is it realistic to think it drops down to 90, 89, 90, 91? That's Andy Dalton territory.
To the Carolina Panthers, who traded Kelvin Benjamin to Buffalo yesterday, a move that surprised a lot of people, including apparently Cam Newton. Reportedly, the quarterback had no advance warning the team was shipping away one of his top targets and closest friends. Cam addressed the trade today.
Pretty much found out when y'all found out. But I don't want to dwell on that. I just, obvious emotional connection, but that can't be a distraction for our preparation this week.
Cowherd, was a mistake for the Panthers to trade away Benjamin?
No, he and Funchess are very similar. There's a duplication between their skill sets. They didn't win more with him, and they want Cam to pay attention to McCaffrey and Samuels, these new, young, fast, quick players. And they also, I think they kind of believed that Cam was good friends with him, and they wanted Cam to move off him as a primary target to other people, and the only way to do that is to get him out of the locker room. I actually like the move. I mean, if you're asking me what they did from a football perspective, I like it. I do think you have to be careful about how it lands for Cam. Cam is shown to be a very emotional player, more than a Russell Wilson or a Brady. So I'm worried about how it lands. Here you have Atlanta this week, big division game. Cam isn't told about it. His best friend's out. Cam could struggle with this for a week or two. That's what I worry about. But I think the move long-term was a good football move.
I think the move is good long-term based on, I believe Miami and Carolina are just 2 franchises, and we're going to see it, I think, around the league that are like, we got to be more Belichick-like. We got to be more Patriots-like. We got to have the right people in our locker room, and we can't make this about catering to Cam Newton or anybody. Cam and Kelvin Benjamin are best friends. From what I understand, 2 of the most immature guys on that team. Break them up. And if Cam's feelings are hurt about it, so what?
Yeah.
And so there needs to be more, I think, from an ownership perspective. This is ownership and leadership perspective in the NFL. It's like we've been catering to the players a little bit too much. And so I think you're seeing with Jerry Richardson and the Carolina Panthers. I think you see it with the Miami Dolphins. They're starting to play a little bit of hardball.
You know what, Jason? Sometimes you talk like the owners make the league. The league has nothing without its players. I'm just going to throw that over there, and we can talk about that another time.
We'll talk about it off camera.
But Kelvin Benjamin has been an underachiever for this football team since his rookie year. His rookie year, he had 73 receptions, 108 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He came back in 2005, tore his ACL in training camp, and he's been a mess since then. He is plain and simply not a good football player. And you know what? You're right. They do draft similar players. Every time you turn around, it looks like they're getting another player that looks like one that they already have on their team. And anytime your tight end is your #1 receiver for the last 5 years,
you're in trouble.
Something's wrong. You're drafting wrong, you're developing wrong, you're doing something wrong. This is a good move because when you look at the draft, there was 4 other wide receivers that went before him. Watkins, Evans.
After or before?
Before him.
Okay.
Watkins, Evans, Odell Beckham, and Brandon Cooks. All of those guys are having somewhat of a halfway decent career. He's just floundering because his hallmark is his rookie season and what he did his rookie season.
And they just moved on.
After that, he won't get himself in shape. He won't work.
Belichick would have moved. You said Belichick?
Yeah.
Belichick would have moved off Kelvin Benjamin.
For a 3rd and a 7th, that was a steal to get rid of him.
It was a good football move.
Absolutely.
The guy leads their team in yardage I mean, they've lost their tight end, who's always been the security blanket. I know this. Systems don't win in the NFL. You know what wins? Good players. Good players win. And here's the most productive guy you've got as a wide receiver that you shipped out. And I don't really care if it hurts Cam's feelings or if it doesn't hurt Cam's feelings. I don't care about that. I care about production. Now, you're right. There was reports in the offseason that he was 280 pounds and all those things. I get that. And if behind the scenes there's an immaturity that's going on, you need to grow some people up, I get that. But production. You've got injuries. You're not producing on the offensive side of the ball. You haven't run it for 2 inches. You've got one guy that's got 475 yards receiving. That to me can be real problematic for this Carolina Panthers team, who's struggling to get off offensively.
They need to build an offensive line, and what these draft picks are going to do is give them the flexibility to do that, because they have it. The reason they lost the Super Bowl to Denver,
5-2 though.
But still,
5-3.
But when you watch them play, the reason they lost the Super Bowl was because of the offensive line. They can't block anybody. They can't run the ball.
You can say that about 90% of the league right now. They can't block anybody.
You're 100% correct. But when you got a $20 million quarterback on your team, and he's the focal point of your team, and you can't protect him, just coming off of shoulder surgery. Come on, you got to run the ball.
I think, to your point, I think they're babysitting him. They don't even trust him at literally a press conference. I think some of this is, fellas, we got to build this team for the next 7 years.
All right, to Denver, where the Broncos announced that Brock Osweiler will get the start against the Eagles on Sunday. The move comes after Monday night's loss against Kansas City, where, as usual, the defense was solid, but Trevor Siemian and the offense couldn't do anything. A trend which is the Denver Post taking aim at John Elway, writing, quote, "While the Broncos were getting barbecued in Kansas City, our old friend John Lynch was engineering a trade with New England for Jimmy Garoppolo. Meanwhile, up in Seattle, the Seahawks made a commitment to a Super Bowl run by obtaining disgruntled offensive tackle Dwayne Brown from Houston. And what was Denver president of football operations John Elway doing? Deciding between peanut butter cups or licorice to hand out for Halloween? Cowherd, do you blame Elway for mishandling the quarterback situation?"
No, because I think a lot of people like Paxton Lynch. Jerry Jones liked Paxton Lynch. I think it's hard to find a quarterback in this league. It's Miami post Marino, Denver post Elway, Bears post Sid Luckman. I mean, it's like there's organizations that can't find one forever. Pete Carroll had a losing record in Seattle. Oh, he stumbled on Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. Pete's a genius.
Not everybody was sitting on the no-fly zone defense, though, and a team that's ready to win right now. And I love John Elway, but I watched that Monday night, and I was like, wow, this is horrendous.
He sniffed out Tebow immediately. He found Trevor Siemian, a capable kid, for a few games in the 7th round. By the way, Brock Osweiler made $70 million in Houston. John wasn't the only guy. Like, it's hard to find quarterbacks.
They're trying to win now.
Hey, listen, if you draft him, then you're responsible for him. And I love John. Played with him, played against him. Think he's a fantastic GM. But he drafted Brock Osweiler in the 2nd round, Trevor Siemian in the 7th, and Paxton Lynch in the 1st. And neither one of these quarterbacks have a rating above 90. Okay, so you can't just throw off blame here. If he drafted him and he went after him, then it has to fall to him. Now, I don't know what the problem is as far as developing these guys. A lot of times that comes down to coaching staff, quarterback coach, offensive coordinators and things of that nature. But you can't absolve him here because he pulled the trigger on these guys.
He also hired the coach who you don't like.
Here to me is the bigger issue is you can look at the quarterbacks. You got to put people around to support quarterbacks, especially if you're drafting them in the 7th round. They have had an offensive line that couldn't block their way out of a wet paper sack for the last 5 years. They don't have a tight end that can get open. They don't have, they have a myriad of different issues. And then all of a sudden you're going to put a quarterback in there that's a young quarterback that has his issues, and you say, hey, we're not going to protect you. We're not going to give you a weapon at the tight end position to control the middle of the field, and good luck, we're all counting on you. Go out there and win a game. My biggest issue with Monday night is Monday night was a winnable game. Monday night you should have won. Monday night you had 3 running backs that averaged, Jamal Charles averaged 5 yards a carry. C.J. Anderson averaged 5.5 yards a carry. Booker averaged 6 yards a carry. You win that game if you don't turn the ball over. Your defense absolutely obliterated Kansas City in the third quarter. I believe they had 12 yards of offense in the third quarter. You put it on them, and you didn't have, or you haven't appointed your coach. You've appointed your coach, but you haven't empowered your coach to make a decision. I mean, Trevor Siemian, he was throwing picks like it was his job. He was dirting balls like it was his job. And you haven't been given the authority to pull him at some point and say, we're gonna try to ignite our offense, just not turn it over. We win this game. And what, you have to call up to the owner's box or the GM's box and go, hey, can we make the move now? At some point, you gotta sack up and make a move.
I thought they looked poorly coached, and I thought the coach looked like he lacked confidence for the reasons you're talking about. He hasn't been empowered. And again, you got a no-fly zone defense that's already proven it can win you a Super Bowl, and you can't get the quarterback situation right, and you turn the team over to a rookie head coach.
Now I think that is a valid issue. When they name that coach in an increasingly offensive league, when they already had good defensive personnel, my first thought was, that's an odd hire. Like, Denver, to me, has always been the Steelers with a mountain range. Like, they just win every year. And I did, the quarterback thing is hard. I did think the naming of the coach, my first reaction was, damn. You have your defense. You need a young, offensive-minded coach to figure Paxton Lynch out, because now Paxton has a defensive.
The closing of this window is painful.
Yes.
Because this defense is really good.
All right, time for last call. Let's move to the Browns, who thought they had made a last-minute trade with the Bengals that would have brought A.J. McCarron to Cleveland until they screwed up the whole thing by celebrating so much they forgot to notify the league office before the trade deadline. Cowherd, should Browns management be fired over this?
Yeah, I mean, they've had 28 different quarterbacks since 1999. It is a completely incompetent organization. I was talking to Albert Breer today, who said that he's been told Sam Darnold will take into consideration who is drafting him. I think this is going to affect a lot of people. And I mean, this feels like the Clippers in Donald Sterling's heyday, where you're like, oh, the fans are held captive. They can't get out of their way.
I think the only person who should be celebrating this is Hugh Jackson, because to me, this was so incompetent.
Yes.
It makes him unfireable.
That's right.
Because again, how could he have any success working for these clowns?
That's a great point.
And so if I'm Hugh Jackson, I'm celebrating this. Again, if I were the owner of the Cleveland Browns, I would be firing this group. They're in over their head.